The diplomatic transport ship glided silently through Earth's orbit, its sleek hull reflecting the pale blue glow of the planet below. Inside, Lisa stood at the observation window, her silvery skin catching the starlight as she gazed at the beautiful world beneath. As a junior diplomat from her world, this was meant to be her first major mission, establishing official contact with the humans. A sudden blast rocked the ship, throwing her against the wall. Red warning lights flooded the corridors. Pirates. The captain's voice boomed through the ship's speakers. All personnel to emergency stations. Lisa ran toward the escape pods, her heart pounding. More explosions shook the ship, and she could hear the sound of hull breaches in the distance. The pirates had caught them completely off guard. This sector was supposed to be safe. A burning pain shot through her side as a piece of shrapnel caught her during another explosion. She pressed her hand against the wound, feeling the warm purple blood seeping between her fingers. The ship lurched again, and she stumbled forward. "Get to the escape pods," someone shouted. Lisa could see other crew members running, some injured, some helping others. Another blast knocked out the main lights, leaving only the emergency strips glowing along the floor. She finally reached the escape pod section, but what she saw made her blood run cold. Most of the pods were either damaged or already launched. Only one remained, its hatch still open. As she limped toward it, she heard heavy footsteps behind her. "There's one of them," a rough voice called out. Laser fire scorched the wall next to her head. Lisa dove into the last pod, her injured side screaming in protest. She slammed her hand on the launch button just as more laser bolts flew past. The pod's door sealed shut, and with a violent jerk, it launched into space. Through the small window, she watched her ship grow smaller, bright explosions still flowering across its hull. The pirates would probably assume she died in the attack. Maybe that was for the best. The pod's automatic systems were already plotting a course toward Earth, aiming for a remote area to minimize the chance of detection. The next few minutes were a blur of pain and fear as the pod entered Earth's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed as the heat shield struggled to cope with the entry angle. Lisa tried to adjust the controls, but her vision was getting blurry. The wound in her side was worse than she'd thought, and the artificial gravity's fluctuations weren't helping. Trees. She could see trees rushing up to meet her. The pod's emergency systems fired retro rockets, but they weren't enough to completely slow the descent. Lisa braced herself as best she could. The impact was devastating. The pod crashed through the forest canopy, bouncing off trees and spinning wildly. Metal screamed as the hull was torn open. Lisa was thrown against her restraints, fresh pain exploding through her body. When the pod finally came to rest, half buried in the soft earth of the forest floor, everything went quiet except for the hiss of cooling metal and the soft patter of rain starting to fall. Lisa drifted in and out of consciousness. Through the shattered window of the pod, she could see Earth's trees swaying in the wind, so different from the crystal forests of her home world. Her translator was damaged, her emergency beacon was barely functioning, and she was bleeding badly. No one would be coming to look for her. They would all think she had died in the attack. As darkness started creeping into the edges of her vision, she thought she heard something moving in the forest outside, but she couldn't tell if it was help or danger approaching. With her last conscious thought, she hoped that the humans were as compassionate as their intercepted broadcasts had suggested. Then everything went black. In the growing storm, a lone figure emerged from the trees, drawn by the sound of the crash. Mark, a former combat medic who had chosen a life of solitude in these woods, stared in amazement at the wreckage before him, and through the broken pod window, he saw something he never expected to find in his quiet corner of the world: an injured alien who desperately needed help. Mark moved carefully through the rain-soaked forest, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth with each step. The crashed pod had carved a path through the trees, leaving broken branches and scattered debris in its wake. His years of military training kept him alert. Anything that fell from the sky in this day and age could mean trouble. The pod itself was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its smooth, metallic surface had an almost pearl-like sheen, even through the mud and damage. Steam rose from the cooling metal, mixing with the light rain to create an eerie mist around the crash site. "Hello," he called out, one hand resting on the medical kit at his hip. The other held a flashlight, its beam cutting through the growing darkness. "Anyone alive in there?" That's when he saw her through the shattered window, a figure slumped in what looked like a pilot's seat. Mark's breath caught in his throat. The being inside was clearly not human. Her skin had a silvery sheen, and even unconscious, there was something undeniably alien about her features. But what caught his immediate attention was the purple blood seeping from a wound in her side. "Okay, Mark," he muttered to himself, just like medical school. "Patient needs help. Doesn't matter what they look like." He'd treated all sorts of wounds in combat zones, but this was definitely a first. The pod's door was jammed. Mark wedged his shoulder against it and pushed, muscles straining until finally, with a screech of metal, it gave way. The interior lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows across the alien's face. Up close, he could see she wasn't so different. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that, while alien, held familiar features. Her pulse point wasn't where a human's would be, but he found it after a moment. Weak but steady. The wound in her side looked like it was from some kind of shrapnel, and purple blood was still slowly seeping from it. The rain was getting heavier, and the temperature was dropping. If he didn't move her soon, shock and exposure would be as dangerous as her injuries. "I'm going to help you," he said softly, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him or even understand English. "Just hang in there." Mark worked quickly, using his medical kit to stabilize the wound as best he could. Some of the medical gear sparked strangely when it touched her skin. Something about her biology was interfering with the electronic equipment. He'd have to do this the old-fashioned way. After applying pressure bandages, he carefully lifted her from the crash sheet. She was lighter than he expected, despite being almost as tall as him. Her skin was cool to the touch, but he could feel a slight vibration, almost like a purr, coming from her chest. Maybe that was normal for her species. He had no way to know. A device that looked like it might be some kind of translator lay broken on the pod's floor. Mark grabbed it. It might be useful later. He also took what looked like a medical kit from the pod, hoping it might contain supplies specifically designed for her species. The trek back to his cabin was slow and careful. The rain had picked up, and the forest floor was becoming treacherous. The alien girl stirred once, making a soft chirping sound that somehow conveyed pain even across species. Mark found himself speaking softly, using the same soothing tone he'd used with wounded soldiers. "Almost there. You're going to be okay. My cabin's just ahead. It's not much, but it's warm and dry." His cabin came into view, a sturdy 2-room structure built to weather any storm. As Mark carried her inside, he realized his quiet life of solitude was about to become very complicated. He had an injured alien in his care, and somewhere up there, whoever had attacked her might be looking for survivors. But as he laid her gently on his bed and began properly cleaning her wounds, Mark knew he'd made the right choice. Human or alien, a life was a life. And if there was one thing his time as a combat medic had taught him, it was that everyone deserved a chance to survive. Lisa woke with a start, her heart racing. The last thing she remembered was the crash, the pain, and the darkness. Now she found herself in a strange room, lying on something soft. The air smelled different, woody and warm, nothing like the sterile environment of her ship. Panic set in as she tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in her side forced her back down. She looked around wildly, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. The room was simple, with wooden walls and basic furniture. Through a window, she could see trees swaying in the wind, and rain still fell steadily outside. A noise from the doorway made her turn her head quickly. There stood a human, tall and strong-looking, holding what appeared to be a bowl of something steaming. Lisa tried to move away, but her body wouldn't cooperate. "Easy there," the human said softly, staying in the doorway. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." He held up his empty hand in what she hoped was a peaceful gesture. Lisa reached for her translator device, only to remember it was damaged in the crash. She touched her throat and made a speaking gesture, then shook her head sadly. The human nodded, seeming to understand. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Mark." Lisa considered for a moment, then pointed to herself and said her name in her language, which sounded like a musical note to human ears. "Lisa," Mark repeated, simplifying it to something his human tongue could manage. She nodded. It was close enough. Mark moved slowly into the room, placing the bowl on a small table near the bed. He pointed to her bandaged side, then made a questioning gesture with his hands. Lisa carefully touched the bandages, realizing her wound had been cleaned and dressed. The pain was less now, and she could feel the healing process had begun. She looked at Mark with new understanding. He must have found her in the crash and brought her here. He had helped her when he could have just as easily left her to die. The stories about human compassion weren't just rumors after all. Mark picked up something from the table, her broken translator. He held it up, pointed to some tools nearby, and made a fixing motion with his hands. Lisa's eyes brightened. She nodded eagerly and made a similar gesture, then pointed to herself. She could fix it if she had the right tools. Working together despite the language barrier, they spread the translator's parts on the table. Mark provided tools, and Lisa carefully began repairs. Her fingers moved surely despite her weakness, reconnecting circuits and adjusting settings. Mark watched with fascination as she worked, occasionally helping to hold pieces in place. After about an hour, there was a spark, and the translator hummed to life. It wasn't perfect, but it would work for basic communication. "Thank you for saving my life," Lisa said through the translator, her words slightly mechanical but clear enough. Mark smiled. "You're welcome. I'm a doctor. Well, was a doctor. In the army. Helping people is what I do." "The pirates," Lisa said suddenly, fear creeping into her voice. "They might come looking." "Let them try," Mark replied calmly. "This forest is my home. Nobody finds anything here unless I want them to." He paused, then asked, "Why were they after you?" Lisa took a deep breath. Was supposed to be part of the first diplomatic mission to Earth. Our leaders thought it was time for official contact. The pirates must have found out somehow. They attack ships, steal technology, take hostages. Mark nodded gravely. "Well, you're safe here for now. Need to get you healthy first, then we can figure out what to do next." Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes, a reaction that surprised Mark, as he hadn't known aliens could cry. "Thank you," she said simply. "Your kindness, it proves we were right about humans." Outside, the storm began to ease, and a few rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. In this small cabin in the woods, two beings from different worlds had begun to bridge the gap between their species, one small gesture of trust at a time. 3 days passed quietly in the cabin. Lisa's wounds were healing faster than Mark expected, and she had regained enough strength to walk around. The morning sun was just rising when Mark's security sensors, carefully hidden throughout the forest, began to buzz. "Someone's here," Mark said, quickly moving to the window. Through his binoculars, he spotted them. 3 figures moving through the trees, their equipment far too advanced to be local hunters. Their suits looked similar to the ones Lisa had described the pirates wearing. "They're scanning for the pod's energy signature," Lisa whispered, her translator quietly conveying her fear. "They'll find it soon." Mark moved quickly, grabbing his old military gear from a hidden compartment under the floorboards. "I didn't spend 10 years in special operations to let some space pirates walk into my home," he said, checking his rifle. "How well can you move?" "Better than they expect," Lisa replied. She stood up straighter, and Mark noticed something strange. Her silvery skin seemed to shift colors slightly, beginning to match the wooden walls behind her. "My people were hunters before we became diplomats. We retained some useful abilities." Mark grinned. Perfect. They think they're hunting an injured diplomat. Let's show them their mistake. They moved out through the back door. Mark had prepared for trouble. He knew every tree, every dip in the ground, every hiding spot in these woods. He'd spent years making this forest his own personal fortress, though he never thought he'd be using it against alien pirates. Lisa moved surprisingly quietly beside him, her skin now perfectly matching the forest colors. If Mark didn't know exactly where she was, he would have lost sight of her completely. They circled around behind the pirates, who were still moving toward the crash site. They have energy weapons, Lisa warned through the translator, keeping her voice low. But their suits are weak at the joints. Mark nodded, understanding. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a signal jammer he'd modified after Lisa explained some basics about their technology. Ready, he whispered. Lisa made a soft clicking sound of agreement. Mark activated the jammer. Immediately, the pirates' suits sparked and their heads jerked up in confusion. Their communications were down. The first pirate never saw what hit him. Lisa seemed to materialize from the forest itself, her hand striking precisely at the weak point in his suit's neck joint. He dropped without a sound, unconscious. Mark took advantage of the confusion, firing 2 perfect shots with his tranquilizer rifle. The second pirate went down, but the third managed to fire his energy weapon. The blast hit a tree, sending splinters flying. Lisa moved like liquid shadow, her camouflaged form flowing around the pirates' defenses. Mark circled the other way, keeping the pirates' attention split. The pirate fired again, but Lisa was already gone, leaving only an afterimage. Your species relies too much on technology, Lisa said, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. The pirate spun wildly, trying to track her. Mark used the distraction to close in. 1 solid hit with his rifle butt, and the final pirate crashed to the forest floor. That was impressive, Mark said, securing the unconscious pirates with restraints. You didn't mention the voice-throwing trick. Lisa's skin returned to its normal silvery color. There are many things my people can do. We choose peace not because we are weak, but because we know the cost of war. She swayed slightly, the exertion having taken a toll on her still healing body. Mark steadied her with a gentle hand. We should get back. More might come, and we need to be ready. They'll have a ship nearby, Lisa said, helping Mark gather the pirates' weapons. These were just scouts. The main force will come soon. Mark looked at the unconscious pirates, then at the alien diplomat who had fought beside him with such skill. Then we'd better prepare. I've got some ideas that might surprise them. Together, they dragged the pirates back to the cabin's cellar. As they worked, both knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was still to come, but now they had something their enemies didn't expect: the combined strength of human ingenuity and alien skill, working as one. The evening after the fight, Mark and Lisa sat by the cabin's fireplace, keeping watch while preparing for the battles ahead. The captured pirates were secured in the cellar, and their weapons had been carefully stored away. The warm fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating a peaceful moment in the midst of danger. Your coffee is interesting, Lisa said, carefully holding the mug Mark had given her. Her silvery fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic, and her expression showed curiosity. In the firelight, her skin seemed to shimmer with subtle colors. Mark couldn't help but smile as she took another sip. Never thought I'd share coffee with an alien diplomat. Is it very different from your drinks? We have something similar, Lisa explained, her translator working smoothly now. But it's made from crystal flowers that grow in our highest mountains. The light shining through them creates the energy we need. She paused, then asked, "Why did you choose to live alone out here?" Mark poked the fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise. After the war, a conflict between human nations, I needed peace. The forest offered that. No politics, no fighting, just honest work and quiet days. He looked at her with a hint of irony. Well, until a space pod crashed in my backyard. Lisa made a sound that Mark had learned was her species' version of laughter. Life has strange ways of changing our plans. I never expected my first diplomatic mission to go like this either. As they talked, Mark noticed how Lisa's wounds had almost completely healed. "Your people recover quickly," he observed. "Yes," she replied, setting down her mug. "We evolved on a harsh world. Quick healing was necessary for survival." She stood and walked to the window, looking at the stars. "See that bright star? My home is near there, though you can barely see our sun from Earth." Mark joined her at the window. "Tell me about your world." Lisa's eyes brightened. "It's beautiful, but very different from Earth. Crystal forests that sing in the wind, floating cities that follow the light of our 3 moons, oceans that glow with living colors." She turned to him. "What about your family? Do they know you're here?" "They respect my choice to live alone," Mark said softly. "After what I saw in the war, I needed to find my own path. But enough about that. Show me more of how your camouflage works. It might help us against the pirates." Lisa stepped back and concentrated. Her skin began to shift, taking on the exact pattern of the wooden wall behind her. "It's not just color," she explained. "We can change our texture too. Feel." Mark carefully touched her arm, amazed to feel the same rough texture as wood. "That's incredible. No wonder your people were such good hunters." "We still hunt," Lisa said, returning to normal. "But now we hunt for knowledge, for understanding. That's why the diplomatic mission was so important. Humanity has something special, a spirit that our scholars noticed in your broadcasts, your messages to the stars." Mark thought about this. "Yet here you are, having to fight again." "Sometimes fighting is necessary to protect peace," Lisa said. "You taught me that, showing kindness to a stranger while being ready to defend against enemies." She touched the translator at her throat. "This device doesn't just translate words, it helps us understand context, meaning. The more we talk, the more I see why my people were right about humans." A quiet beeping from one of Mark's sensors interrupted them. They both tensed, but it was just a deer passing through the perimeter. "We should rest," Mark suggested. "Take turns keeping watch. Tomorrow we'll need to prepare more defenses." Lisa nodded, but before heading to her room, she turned back. "Mark, thank you. Not just for saving me, but for showing me what humanity truly is." As Mark took the first watch, he thought about how strange life was. He'd sought solitude, yet found friendship with someone from across the stars. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, he knew this unique partnership would face them together. The pirates attacked at dawn. Mark's sensors picked up their ships breaking through the cloud cover, 3 small assault vessels designed for quick raids. They descended like angry wasps, energy weapons already charging. "They're here," Mark called out, grabbing his modified rifle. Thanks to Lisa's help, he'd adapted some of the captured pirate weapons to work with his own equipment. "Ready?" Lisa appeared beside him, her skin shifting to match the morning shadows. "Ready. Remember, their shields can't handle rapid temperature changes." They had spent the previous day preparing the forest. Mark knew every trap, every hiding spot, every escape route. The pirates might have advanced technology, but this was his home. He'd turned the entire forest into a battlefield that favored them. The first explosion rocked the trees as the pirates tried to clear a landing zone. But Mark had expected this. The explosion triggered his first trap, old military smoke grenades mixed with Lisa's alien technology. Purple smoke filled the air, interfering with the pirates' sensors. "Now," Mark signaled. Lisa moved like a ghost through the smoke, her camouflaged form barely visible. The pirates' first squad dropped from their ships, only to find the ground beneath them wasn't as solid as it appeared. The forest floor collapsed, dropping them into carefully prepared pit traps. Mark's rifle cracked, not killing shots, but precise hits that disabled the pirates' weapon systems. "Their reinforcements will be more careful," he warned through their comlink. "Move to position 2. The pirates' leader bellowed orders in their harsh language. Energy beams cut through the trees, trying to flush out the defenders. But Mark and Lisa were already moving, using the chaos to their advantage. Lisa's voice came through Mark's earpiece. 3 trying to flank from the east. I'll handle them. There was a brief burst of alien combat sounds. Then silence. Clear, she reported. Mark grinned. Her people's hunting abilities combined with his tactical training made them a formidable team. He triggered another set of traps, this time launching a barrage of modified pirate weapons. The energy bursts knocked out one of the assault ship's engines, sending it crashing into the trees. But the pirates weren't done. Their leader, a huge alien in crimson armor, activated some kind of shield generator. A dome of energy began spreading across the battlefield. They're trying to trap us, Lisa warned. That field will block my distress signal. Then we end this now, Mark replied. He pulled out their secret weapon, a device they'd built using parts from Lisa's pod and the captured pirates' equipment. Remember what you said about rapid temperature changes? Lisa's translator conveyed her laugh. Just like the crystal storms back home. Do it. Mark activated the device. It looked simple, just a small box with blinking lights, but it began pumping out waves of alternating heat and cold. The pirate's shield sparkled and crackled as the temperature stress built up. The pirate leader realized the danger too late. His shield generator overloaded, the explosion knocking him off his feet. Lisa appeared above him, her camouflage dropping as she delivered a precise strike to his armor's weak point. The remaining pirates, seeing their leader fall and their ships disabled, began to surrender. Mark kept them covered while Lisa used their own restraints to secure them. Not bad for a human who likes to live alone, Lisa said, her skin returning to its natural silver color. Not bad yourself, for a diplomat, Mark replied, keeping his rifle ready as they gathered the prisoners. Suddenly, Lisa's translator picked up new signals. Mark, my people, they received the distress call. They're coming. The morning sky lit up with new ships arriving. But these were sleek diplomatic vessels, not pirate raiders. Lisa's people had finally found her. Mark watched the ships descend, knowing everything was about to change. The quiet life he'd built here in the forest was over. But looking at Lisa, seeing the joy on her alien features as her people arrived, he realized he didn't mind. Sometimes the best discoveries in life came from unexpected changes. Ready to make history? Lisa asked, turning to him. The first official contact between our peoples. Mark shouldered his rifle and nodded. Lead the way, diplomat. Just remember who patched you up when you tell the story. The diplomatic ships landed in a clearing near Mark's cabin, their arrival far more graceful than the pirate's pilot entrance. Lisa stood tall beside Mark as her people emerged, elegant beings with the same silvery skin, their formal robes flowing in the morning breeze. High Council member, Lisa exclaimed, recognizing the lead figure. Her translator conveyed both respect and surprise. I didn't expect you to come personally. The council member, tall and distinguished-looking, approached them. When we received your distress signal and the subsequent battle reports, I had to see this for myself. His gaze turned to Mark. So, you are the human who saved our young diplomat. Mark straightened up, suddenly aware of his worn clothes and the rifle still slung over his shoulder. I just did what anyone would do, he said simply. The council member made a gesture that seemed to ripple through the air. Not anyone. You protected one of our own when you could have turned away. You risked your life against superior technology. And most importantly, his translator conveyed a tone of amusement. You managed to teach our most energetic young diplomat some patience. Lisa's skin flickered with colors, her species' version of blushing. He taught me much more than that, she said. High Council member, what happened here proves everything we believed about humans. They are capable of such kindness, such resourcefulness. Security teams from the diplomatic ships were already taking custody of the captured pirates. Mark watched as they efficiently secured the prisoners and began collecting the scattered pirate technology. "We've been monitoring Earth for some time," the council member explained to Mark, "waiting for the right moment for official contact. We never expected it would happen quite like this." He gestured at the battlefield around them, the disabled pirate ships, the clever traps, the signs of their combined resistance. "Sometimes the best plans are the ones that happen by accident," Mark said, earning an appreciative sound from Lisa. The council member's translator conveyed deep consideration in his next words. "We find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. Our planned diplomatic mission was disrupted, yet we gained something perhaps more valuable. Proof of humanity's character in action, not just theory." He turned to address both Mark and Lisa. "Young diplomat, your mission, though not as planned, has been a success. And you, human warrior who chooses peace, we would be honored if you would consider a position as Earth's first advisor in our diplomatic course." Mark blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a former soldier who lives in the woods." Lisa touched his arm gently. "You're the one who proved that our peoples can work together. Who better to help bridge our worlds?" Looking around at his forest home, Mark thought about the quiet life he built here. But then he remembered the excitement of working with Lisa, the satisfaction of combining their different abilities and knowledge. Maybe it was time for a new chapter. "I accept," he said. "On one condition. I keep this place. Sometimes diplomats need a quiet forest to think in." The council member's translator conveyed amusement again. "Agreed. And I suspect our young diplomat here will not mind having a reason to visit Earth regularly." Lisa's skin rippled with happy colors. "We made a good team," she said to Mark. "We still do." As the diplomatic teams began setting up proper communication arrays and preparing for the formal announcement of first contact, Mark stood with Lisa at the porch of his cabin one last time. "Think you'll miss the quiet life?" she asked. Mark watched the organized chaos below. Human authorities arriving to coordinate with Lisa's people, medical teams treating the injured pirates, diplomatic staff preparing statements. "Actually," he said with a smile, "I think life's about to get a lot more interesting." The morning sun rose higher, shining down on humans and aliens working together, all because one soldier chose to help a wounded stranger who fell from the sky. Sometimes, the greatest journeys start with the simplest acts of kindness. "Come on," Lisa said, her translator conveying excitement. "We have two worlds to introduce to each other." Mark nodded, ready for his new adventure. After all, he was no longer just a former combat medic living alone in the woods. Now he was humanity's first alien diplomatic advisor, and he had a feeling this was just the beginning of an amazing story.